Hello, everybody. Right off the bat, let's get going so you can get to this episode that is coming up. First off, I have to thank all of our listeners out there, everybody that's gone on and subscribed, whether it be in iTunes or Google Play or our YouTube channel, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, everywhere. Thank you very much for supporting the podcast. We have some exciting news. You can now find us online at energyislovepodcast.com. That's right, energyislovepodcast.com. Go check it out. Go Google and find our website. All of the information's there on the website now. All of our past episodes. We're going to be updating that website with future guests that we have coming on, as well as bios about past guests. Tons of information is going to be available through our website. Contact us through our website. You just go to the energyislovepodcast.com, click on the contact tab or link. Send us some love. Contact us. Let us know what you think of the episodes. Let us know what you think of the show, how it's inspiring you, how it's helping you in everyday life. Or we love getting feedback from our listeners. Thank you very much. Crystal Water Float Spa, huge sponsor and support of the podcast. Crystal Water Float Spa on Facebook or crystalwaterfloat.com. At Crystal Water, you get to sit back and float and relax inside your own dream pod. Crystal Water Float Spa is also the nation's, that's right, the United States only distributor of the Dream Pod. You can now buy your Dream Pod directly through Crystal Water. Save time, money, and hassle by ordering your Dream Pod from Crystal Water. Contact them. Like I said, go online, crystalwaterfloat.com, or check out their Facebook page, Crystal Water Float Spa, on Facebook. Tons of information about floating and all the amazing benefits of it, so go check them out. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. Thank you for all your support. Everybody, you are part of the universe, which makes up the podcast. So kind of you're part of the podcast in a way. Thank you very much. Much love. What's up, everybody? On today's episode, Randy Palmer. Randy Palmer is a super kick-ass sweet guy that him and I grew up in the same small town together out here in Utah. And I had Randy come on the show today because, first off, he's part of the reason why the podcast exists even. Randy came out and visited. He lives up in North Dakota now, and he came out earlier this year, and he had me sit down, and we recorded an episode for the podcast that he's going to be doing. And it was a really wonderful experience. And that's part of the inspiration for me to get into podcasting, was sitting down with Randy. And so, of course, I wanted to return the favor and have him come be on the show. And he talked about a lot of different things. He shared his experience as a drug addict throughout his 20s and things like that. So it was really important for me to kind of get his story out there and share that information and his insight and the lessons that he's learned and the things that he's gone through and experienced because of that drug addiction. But I loved having Randy on the show. He now uses his experiences from going through what he's gone through, and he helps people and he counsels people. He's essentially a life coach in a way, and he's got a lot of purpose in life to help other people, not just in the realm of drug addiction, but people in general who are stuck and suffering. Randy's one of those guys that was able to come out of that and see the greater meaning behind life and the importance of living. And so that's why he was on the show, because he's got a great message, and I absolutely love the guy. You can go out and find more about Randy at his website. It's entersobriety.com. It's ENTRE sobriety, entersobriety.com. All of his contact information is there. Like I said, you can go and find out and learn more about him. Just a great episode. You guys are going to love it. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode with Randy Palmer on the podcast for the universe.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Good morning, everybody. It's morning here in sunny Utah. So whether it's morning when you're listening to it or not, that doesn't really matter. But what's up, Randy?
What's up?
How are you?
Good.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. I'm glad that... why did you guys come into town? First off, I mean, we can explain tons of stuff, and I always do the intro ahead of time so people already know who you are and a little bit about you and things. But why'd you come into town? Because you're from North Dakota.
Well, I'm from Utah.
But we live in North Dakota. Been there about 5 years, so I guess you could say we're kind of from there. But came into town to go on vacation with my family. One of those things where you plan a family vacation. They tell you how much it is and when you're going, and you show up and you don't ask questions. So
When you say family vacation, was it just your family or the big extended family? Like
no,
the
just
folks
my
from
family.
Utah?
My family.
Yeah.
Like, well, my brothers and sisters, mom and dad, husbands, nieces and nephews.
Where'd you guys go?
Well, we're going to Anaheim. We're leaving Sunday to go to Anaheim.
You're going to do like the whole Disneyland?
You know, I might take my 5-year-old, but we're probably just going to do like the surrounding areas, some hiking.
That's coffee, by the way.
Yeah.
It is morning time. Have you ever been to California before?
Yeah, I have several times.
That'll be fun. How long are you guys going to be there?
About a week. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to take my bike, my mountain bike, and go ride some trails. And, you know, that's what I'm looking forward to more than anything.
Yeah. You have to remind me how many kids you have.
3.
3?
Mm-hmm.
Boys or girls?
2 boys and 1 girl.
Is your girl your youngest?
No, she's in the middle. I got a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and my youngest boy, he's 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been going on? I know we caught up a little bit before we pushed record, but tell me a little bit about what's going on.
Well, I'm still doing what I always do, analyzing everything, trying to, you know, I have a company up in North Dakota. I haul oil. I have a semi-truck. But probably I don't know if you remember when I first started putting videos out on YouTube, and it's probably been a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, I went through a transition where I before that, I was in North Dakota. That's during the oil boom. That was my first real experience with having success in business and having some money and just some of the blessings that can bring your family and some of the choices that are easier to make and stuff like that. So then I, you know, came back to Utah, started a business, and I got into it. And that's when as I started to get into it, I had a couple employees, and I started to realize that, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, at some point, it's just like, okay, well, even if I make this work, I'll probably make some money, but what's the point other than that?
Yeah. It's not something you're passionate about.
Yeah, well, you know, we can become passionate about anything if we find a way to do it. But
if we force ourselves to.
Right. You know, that's a loaded topic. But basically, I started to kind of question on a bigger level. Like, I started to realize anything that we as humans put our energy into consistently over time, there's gonna be synchronicity, as you call it. It's gonna open doors. You're gonna have connections. You're gonna meet people. You're gonna do things. So I started to look, like, I played my life forward 15, 20 years, and I said, is this what I want to be doing? Is this what I want to put my energy into?
What was the business?
It was a freight brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now I realize, you know, there's a lot of, like, for example, Tim Ferriss, when people ask him what he does, he'll tell them, well, what I do for money and what I do with my time are two different things. You know, eventually you can create a source of income and kind of delegate it and put it out to where it's kind of evergreen and creating income. And that's what I love about online businesses. So what's up now is as I went through that process of kind of evaluating, like, what's the point of business? Okay, there's money, there's family, there's the challenge, which I've always kind of liked the challenge. I started to, you know, wonder why I was doing it. So I walked away from that company, kind of just closed. Well, I didn't walk away from it. I pivoted, and then I went back to North Dakota because I knew there was a steady source of income there. And North Dakota is also a very special place in the fact that all there is up there is farmers. So it's just beautiful.
It's podunk.
Yeah. There's 30 miles in a town with 10 houses.
Yeah.
40 miles a town with 2, you know. And there's this time of year especially, there's these fields, this canola and flax, and I don't know if you've ever seen those when they're blooming, but canola is bright yellow, and then flax is purple. It almost looks like the ocean or water. So it created an environment for me where I could go up there, kind of get out of my typical environment as far as where I grew up, all those emotions and insecurities and all that stuff and kind of get outside of it. Still have a source of income for my family as I started to build basically from the ground up my future. And what I mean by that is what I feel like if I were to step into my like what life has taught me.
Yeah.
What I feel like I'm supposed to be teaching now, which would be in the form of addiction recovery, entrepreneurship, mostly this concept of transformation, helping people realize that they can transform their lives. And then that through that process, they'll actually have the advantage in a lot of situations. Like their experiences are going to teach them and help them and train them to actually be better prepared for, opportunities and maybe even adversity that comes up in the future and things like that.
What was it about North Dakota? Like, did you have any ties to it whatsoever, or was it just a matter of...
You mean in the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, when I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of my first companions, he was from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So he was always talking about this oil and all these semi-trucks and all this stuff that him and his family would do, and all this money they were making, and all these cars they had, and all this stuff. So when I returned home from that mission back to Salt Lake City, I'd been working for a while for my dad's company, and I was thinking, I'd like to get my wife, and I'd like to kind of get out of town for a while, So I called this buddy of mine and said, hey, can I come up and work for you for the summer just to make some money? And he said, well, I'm in Canada, so you can't legally come work for me. There's a process. But my uncle's in North Dakota. If you want, you can go work for him. He's looking for a driver. And this was like 2011, 2012, right in the boom. It was crazy up there. I mean, it was literally like the gold rush of California. And, it was just hundreds of people living in campers on the side of the road, at Walmart, everything. So that was the connection, was him. And we drove up there. I checked it out for a few weeks and then went back up. That was the connection to North Dakota.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a weird place to move to. Do you know what I mean? That's why I was wondering, like, if I know you don't have necessarily family up there or anything like that, because all your family's here in Utah, but it's not the random place that people pick. I think I'm going to move to North Dakota. Not that there's anything bad. We're not bagging on North Dakota. It is a beautiful place. Well, I drove through it on a Greyhound bus once when I was like 19 years old. It's pretty. It's a nice state.
Yeah. What time of year was that?
It was winter, so it was pretty miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had lunch in Fargo and, got back on the bus, and it was a long trip.
For the most part, and it's settled down now a lot, the people up there are just so humble, so grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Their grandparents farmed that land, then their parents farmed that land, now they're farming that land. A lot of them, they've got a homestead surrounded by trees, and they've got 5 or 6 miles before there's another home, and they just have their life. They've got their kids and their dog and their tractors on their farm, and a lot of them, they don't need anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't.
It's a nice way to live.
I'm envious of that lifestyle in a lot of ways, because I just think it gives people time to reflect, which is what I found when I went up there. Is because, when I just felt like if I could emulate those people a little bit, that it would help me be more grounded when I started the business I'm currently, building, that it would help me kind of do it from a more eternal perspective.
Yeah.
The more of the law of the harvest, when we talk about people and helping people change and what's really going to matter in life because we're all going to die,
We are.
So
what were we do? I'm trying to think what we were doing the other day. I don't remember what it was, but my wife and I were talking, and you'll have people that are sick or suffering from some sort of illness or disease or something like that, and the doctors will give them a timeline where it's like, you have 6 months to live, or if we do this procedure or this operation, or we're going to try this, it might extend it to 9 months, but there's no real specifics, and everybody gets caught up in that. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, we're all going to die. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. And so it's silly to think that just because you have some illness or disease that, your life is limited to the next 6 months or 3 months or 2 years, or manipulating time and, trying to extend it out further and all that kind of different stuff. And the reality is we're all on that same path. I don't know if I have 3 months to live. I don't know if I have 40 years.
Yeah.
It could be next week. It could be when we get done with this interview. I could have a heart attack right now. You just never know.
Right.
But it's a weird concept.
Well, isn't it? That's just one example, but as humans, we do that in every area of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We put boundaries and limits and expectations on everything we do. I have to laugh. You see these videos on YouTube where these guys are using the gym equipment wrong. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah, and the person's filming them.
The gym fails.
Yeah.
Where they come into this gym and they see a machine and they maybe they sit on it backwards, or they do something just kind of funny or funky, and they're
that would
there.
be me at the gym. It's been so long. I don't know how to use half of those things.
That to me, the gym is like a little micro economy or like a little micro Earth experiment.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, just like in that situation, somebody comes in there and doesn't fit in. They don't fit the mold. They don't fit the expectation. Other people take videos of it. They laugh at them. They make fun of them. But eventually, people like that turn out to be Steve Jobs, or people who change the way we think as a collective in the universe as people. So I always laugh at those because they are funny. I wouldn't personally do some of those things.
You're not going to go film the person in the gym.
But I also think that everybody sitting there watching them are just as silly for, when you kind of take it out on a different scale.
They are funny, though. There's some good ones out there.
Yeah.
Randy's part of the reason why we have the podcast. That's one of the really, really amazing things. Because you texted me the other day and you wanted to come in and float and everything like that. And I'm like, hell yes, you're in town. Let's do a podcast. Because it was back in, do you remember when you were out last, like in February or January or?
It would have been more like March or April.
Was it March or April? Mm-hmm. And Randy comes into the spa and he floats and he loves it. And then the next day he comes over to the house and we do a podcast together. And I got done with that and thought about it for several days and talked to my wife. And I'm like, that was fun. I really, really liked that. It was a good time. And then it just exploded from there in my mind and all the different avenues and all the different things. And then I go hit Google hard trying to come up with the game plan and the idea and all the different things that I would need to do technically to get it kind of going and everything. But you were a big factor when it came to this podcast. So when you came in and you wanted to come float, I'm like, you got to be on the show. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I almost said no.
Why?
Because I felt like, what am I going to, I'm not where I would like to be.
I don't think anybody's where they would like to be.
I know. And then I realized, well, that's the point. Like, I've made it.
Uh-huh.
Last night I snuggled with my 5-year-old. I had breakfast this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That's what it comes down to, because I think about that all the time, where it's like, I always want more in life, right? I always want to be, and it doesn't really have anything to do with success. It just has to do with happiness. I want to be more happy. I want to be more joyful. I want a better relationship with my wife and with my kids and my extended family and my friends and everything like that. I always want more out of life. But then it's really kind of reminding yourself that you are there. You are happy, and just being present in those moments. Because the reality is, I mean, like we said earlier, nobody has any idea when they're going to leave. And so you might as well enjoy it while you're here and really recognize those moments when they pop up. Because they are there more often than not. Even when you struggle in depression and, anxiety and all these kind of different issues and things like that. The fact is that life's pretty good. Now, granted, there's people out there that think, bullshit, life's pretty good because they're living a really hard life, and I understand that. But if you can shift your mind and your perspective and the way that you not just look at life, but the way you kind of move through life, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot to add to the show. That's why I was excited to have you come on.
Well, it's just, Craig, one of the hardest things, I went to the LDS Business College for a few years after I got home from my mission. And I learned that, when it comes, like, I just really felt like I just kind of clicked in the economy as far as the free market. Like, I don't have negative. I don't feel like just because some guy is successful in business that he must be a crook or a cheat. But I also, because of my life experiences, I don't feel like some guy that's shooting up dope on State Street is any less of a person than the businessman or anybody else.
Yeah.
But when I say that I almost turned down the podcast because I felt like, just give me 6 months. Because what happened, I came in and I interviewed you for my podcast.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's not even live. So I was thinking, well, Craig, let me get my podcast live first. And then if any of your listeners want to come over to my podcast and listen, they can.
Yeah.
But it's just this whole thing of saying yes. Like when things come your direction, the truth is I have a lot of stuff inside of me that needs to come out. And that's been bottled up for a while. And that's part of the reason why I'm purposely transitioning patiently out of the trucking industry, out of just business in general, just as a stream of finances, to something that I can do 100% with my time. And for me, it's not even about being happy. I don't think that that's my end goal, is to be happy.
What's the end goal then?
Man, there's people struggling. Like there's people who are hooked on drugs or just in a negative pattern of thought, a thought pattern that they literally don't believe that they can change.
Yeah.
Like, I want to plant some seeds. You know what I mean? Like, I remember. So I don't know. Can I just kind of go into my story a little bit?
You can go into your story as much as you want. That's the beauty. It's my podcast. We do
Yeah.
whatever the hell we want.
Okay. Well, I was growing up. I really. My parents were awesome. Childhood was awesome. But as do with most families, there's some holes in our game, right?
Uh-huh.
So as I kind of got into my early teens, I started to develop some anxieties. Like I hated reading in public or speaking in public and all these things. And I even with sports, it affected my sports where I just stopped playing sports and stuff like that. So I don't know, I think I was 16 or 17, went in to get my tonsils or something. I think my tonsils or a tooth fix or something, came home with a bottle of Lortab.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I just remember like the first time I took a couple of those, it was instant. It's like the world opened up to me. I could go anywhere. I could speak my mind. I could do anything. It was an amazing thing for me. So I started to kind of experiment, dabble in some of that. And that over the years, fast forward to 16 to 23 years old, full-fledged drug addict. Can't go one day without it or I'm sick. I mean, I can't believe it. I look back. I had the flu once a week for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I threw up 2 or 3 Christmases. Like I threw up, I don't know, last Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, wow, I used to do that once a week.
Yeah.
I haven't thrown up in 5-6 years. Anyway, full-fledged drug addiction.
Did you just stay with prescription?
No, I mean, I never got into heroin. I was always kind of afraid of it. And I had boundaries as far as what I would do. I knew I didn't want to go to jail. I knew I didn't want to break the law. I didn't want to hurt anybody. So I like to say that I was the most honest drug dealer in town. Like if I made a deal with somebody, I would honor it.
Uh-huh.
And if I didn't, I would go back and make it right. You know what I mean? And
the most honest drug dealer or the most honest drug user?
Yeah, I didn't deal drugs, but the point is that I was lost.
Yeah.
At first it was a Band-Aid for my insecurities and my anxieties, and then it became worse. And the more prescriptions I took for those things, the worse they got. Like I never had worse anxiety in my life than when I was taking anxiety medication or antidepressants. And I just went through a stream of different things, and eventually I found opiates and sometimes alcohol that kind of bridged that gap in my brain to help me kind of get over those things. So it evolved to where it was just horrible, just always looking for it. They found recently with the study of, I want to say dopamine or the pleasure, the pleasure sense. It's not about actually having it. It's about seeking it. So that same thing with people say, well, I just want to be happy, this and that. So they found that it's not having it, it's seeking it. And I remember that. I remember looking for 2 or 3 days for pills, finally finding them, driving into Salt Lake and getting them, not even doing them, just having them in my pocket, and my withdrawals were gone.
Yeah.
My symptoms were gone.
See, that's a tricky thing with the brain, because that's going to be a whole chemical, you know, like you said, dopamine and all these different things that are going on inside you internally, that it's just weird. It's weird how it manifests itself, where you have that urge, you have that crave, you have that need. And then once you, like you said, you just get the pills, then you're okay for a while. Just the fact that you have it is enough to kind of subside. It's interesting. It's weird.
Yeah.
And then it makes you wonder, like, you know, if there was like a placebo. So maybe somebody just gives you a sugar pill, but in your mind, it's whatever, you know, that's that opiate. And then if that would have sufficed, because now your brain is playing tricks where you don't know that it's not, I don't know. It's just interesting. I love the internal workings of our mind and the brain and how it all kind of spins.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It's very powerful. I want to talk to you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to talk to you about, because one of the things that we haven't addressed on the podcast before, I haven't had anybody really come on before and talk about addiction. I've thought about it, and there's some people that I've kind of, you know, brainstormed around. I wanted to have guests and things like that. And so if you're all right with it, I want you to talk about the mindset of an addict and the way that they kind of process and move through life. Because I'm an addict. I'm addicted to, you know, caffeine, to nicotine. I drink like 1.5 pots of coffee every morning, and I smoke like a fiend. So I know that I have that addictive quality, but for some reason in society, we've deemed those somewhat okay, depending on who you are. But when it comes to drug addiction, I think that it's a much more severe form of addiction. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I don't have coffee, I'm okay. It's not driving me nuts. I don't get sick. I don't have withdrawals. I might have a little bit of a headache or something like that. But speak on it as best as you can if you're all right with it, and just go into the mindset of an addict and kind of what they deal with and what they struggle with. And then also the fact that you're no longer in that space, in a sense, because you can see it from the outside. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, you know, it's 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You wake up. And at least for me, now I could be different. I was raised, I had a spiritual upbringing, but I don't think it matters. Most people, most addicts, they know that they need to make a change. And they know that. I don't think that there's any time where they know that clearer than in the mornings. So you wake up, it's 8 a.m, and as you become consciously aware that it's daylight, that it's time that you're awake, there's this clarity, and there's these thoughts that sink into your mind and in your heart, and that say, you know, you could still accomplish your goals. Like, you could still go work for your father's company. You could still go get your degree. You could still go get a job. You could still go help your neighbor who's elderly work in the, you know, help fix her yard up. And you can still, like, do what it is you wanted to do when you were younger, when you had dreams. And you can overcome all these things that you're avoiding. You can do it. And there's like this little bit of a, well, yeah, but what about the things that I've done? What about the people that I've hurt? What would it take for me to do that? And then it's this guilt and this shame that kind of sinks in. I've already tried that. I tried that yesterday. I tried that last week. I tried that last month. And every time I try it, it falls apart. And then this kind of reality sets in of, man, I'm just a horrible person. And then you get this negative self-talk. And then, almost instantly, it says, you still got some pills in your top drawer. And it's as if none of those thoughts were ever there, and your mind shifts and you get adrenaline. a little bit of adrenaline starts to flow through your body. And you say, it's all going to be okay. I'm going to do those things, but not today. Today I'm going to get up. I'm going to get in my top drawer. I'm going to take a pill out. I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to snort it. And then I'll go help my neighbor, or I'll go maybe apply for a job. But if I run out of pills, or if I don't get enough, then that's going to take priority. And that adrenaline gets you out of bed, get your shoes on, get you going for the day. And from that point, it's just a race. It's just selfish. How can I stay comfortable? How can I stay in the mindset I want to be in? How can I stay not sick? And how can I have fun? Who can I go talk to? How can I avoid these things that are inside of me that are so hurtful that I've been avoiding for so long? How can I avoid myself? How can I basically numb myself? At least it was for me.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
In the moment of, I mean, for lack of a better way to describe it, essentially when you're high, when you're in that space where things are kind of numb and you're no longer feeling the stress and the anxiety and the shame and all the negative stuff that you've been processing, do you have a moment of kind of clarity where it's just euphoria and you're not really feeling, or is there always some quiet thing in the back of your mind, some aspect of it where, you know, that voice that is just muted or quieted down by whatever it was that you just took?
You mean once you're high?
Yeah.
For me, it's pretty much gone at that point. At that point, you're not consciously shut your conscious mind off. You're just running on the programs of your parents and grandparents at that point. I mean, you don't. For me, anyway, it was just I used to love having conversations. Like I could snort a pill, and then I could go talk to the lady at the gas station. And I'd leave and I'd just be like, man, that was a powerful conversation. We've really connected.
Yeah.
You know? Like I talked about her daughter, and she had these beautiful blue eyes, and they have a dog, and it was like, that was such a powerful conversation. See, at that point, that's where the illusion comes in.
Yeah.
That without it, without that line, those powerful conversations can't happen. And that's where it comes back into this dopamine level, or this ability to feel joy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you overload your brain with large amounts of opiates, it tricks your brain to thinking that it's happier than it actually is. And the more you do that, the higher that level gets. So just like caffeine or whatever, it takes more and more and more and more to feel happy. So when I don't have a pill and I go have the same conversation, then it's just bland. It's just hollow. It was empty. We didn't connect. There was no spiritual connection. But when you take the pill and when you connect it, then everything's okay in your brain. At that point, you don't need to do anything different because everything's good. Those goals and all that stuff, maybe in the future, but probably not, because you've already tried that. Like just keep a steady supply, and life moves forward.
Yeah.
It's such an illusion. It really is a deception on your brain. It tricks your brain.
I think it alters your brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the longer you're an addict and the longer that you use, I think those natural kind of synapses that take place and the chemical reactions and the way that your brain kind of functions normally, I think it's altered by those substances.
Altered by everything.
Mm-hmm.
The water we drink, everything, it's altered by everything. However, if energy is love,
Totally is.
if there's, in my view, a supreme power that's greater than us,
Uh-huh.
or several powers, something else is in charge of the laws that naturally govern this universe. And I don't know how to break those laws. I can break myself against those laws. But if you're into that deep addiction, all it takes, the first thing is a seed to be planted that says, you know what, I actually think that maybe I could actually get out of this cycle. Because I remember that's one of the first things that I was sitting in my apartment. I'd been doing pills for about 4 years, and I was just in my comfort bubble. You know, I had my Mountain Dew, had some Swedish Fish, watching MTV in my recliner, and this commercial came on, and it was this guy, and it was kind of like this rainbow, and he was leaning up against this brick wall. And this was 10 years ago, but I remember it like it was just yesterday. And he had kind of long hair down to his shoulders, and he said he had 6 months clean from a drug addiction. And a light, a little tiny light came on in my brain, and then it kind of descended into my heart, and it said, you could do the same thing. And I thought, really? Are you serious? Like, but I liked that little light. And then I started to think, okay, like, I'm 23 now. Where am I going to be when I'm 30? Like, maybe if I went to rehab, I could be like that guy. Maybe if I got arrested, maybe I should get arrested and go to jail, because then I could be away from it for a while. My family would know, the community would know. It would all be out in the open. Of course, everybody knew anyway.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that maybe he's right. Like, maybe I could nurture that seed. Maybe that could grow. And man, our brains are powerful. When you plant a seed in there and you start to nurture it and you connect it with emotion, you know, a lot of the stuff I talk about when it comes to our brains, I learned from Janie Marvin, that works at Matter Behavioral Health, the rehab I went to. But they've proven that nerves that wire together fire together. And you take any firing order in our brain. For example, I had a thought for a long time that I can't quit. I can't quit. I can't quit. I can't quit. And every time I tried, it was an emotional, heart-wrenching, terrifying experience. So that thought is connected with an emotion, just like a brand is heated up and pushed onto a cow.
Yeah.
That thought is pushed into my subconscious, which is stored throughout my entire body, not just in my brain. It goes everywhere. That's why we wiggle our feet when we talk. That's why we can think better when we're moving and walking. So nerves that wire together fire together. If I can plant that seed that says maybe I can change, and if I can feel emotion, that's like one lightning strike. And the more I can connect emotion to that thought or similar thoughts, if I can connect an emotion to that thought for 90 days, sometimes intense emotion, sometimes not so intense, but also there's other sensory data that comes in that brings in other information from lots of other stuff. For example, if you put something in the microwave, the ding or the sink in the kitchen, it's all connecting in one way or another. But if I can connect emotion to that thought, or there's a new seed planted for 90 days, that thought pattern will then become the primary thought pattern my brain will take. In 3 months, you can take any thought you have and you can reroute it literally in your brain, but you have to connect it to emotion, and you have to do it consistently, and it's hard.
It is hard. It takes
because
practice.
You don't feel like you're making any progress. But that's basically what they taught me, is to be able to visually, subconsciously imagine, because our brain doesn't know the difference between what we see and what we imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It thinks it's all the same. That's why you can be watching a movie and get scared or cry. It's pretend, but your brain doesn't know it's pretend. So it's this to me, it just comes back to this, what I would like to do more of, and the reason I agreed to the podcast is because I want to plant those seeds, and then I want to water them. I want to wake people up. I want to bring some energy into the addiction space. I feel like there's too much dogmatic, medical lingo that's not connecting with people. Yeah, I get it, science and all this stuff. It's great. I support it. You should go to rehab. You should see an addiction doctor. Don't go to your local clinic. They don't know anything. They have like 2, maybe 3 hours of addiction training in their entire doctorate degree.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I would like to bring some energy into the space of addiction and bring to light what's going on in our community, because Utah, Salt Lake City, Provo, and you want to talk about pain and agony. There's a lot of kids and a lot of parents. The parents might be getting theirs on a piece of paper from the pharmacy, but it's really, some of it's not that much different.
It's not. And I want to bring up, because first off, thank you. It's some powerful stuff, and the way that you described it is really good. But the specific thing of having a thought and having a positive thought, whether it's even just I can do this, or my life could be different, or it doesn't really kind of matter what it is. It kind of has a positive energy behind it. But then you do have to connect it with emotion. And that's one of the things that we tell people all the time. Like, think of a moment in your life when you were the happiest, or some experience that you can recall where you were really happy.
Mm-hmm.
And after you've thought about that, then go deeper in how did you feel in that moment? And then remember the feeling associated with it. And then keep that in the forefront of your mind. So as you're starting to progress down a negative train of thought, or a path where you're starting to kind of spin in all that negativity, you have to stop, even if it's for a moment, even if it's for, a blink of an eye, and then replace it with that positive thought and that emotion associated with that positivity. And so, like you said, it's hard, and a lot of times you don't feel like you're doing anything. It doesn't feel like it's beneficial or helpful, because you don't see immediate reaction from it. But the reality is, internally and energetically, like if we're talking about all that spirituality, hippie bullshit, you're doing major shifts and changes with just mere thought and emotion.
Sure. I think the hardest thing about it is just becoming consciously aware of it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so programmed to function, just everything that's coming to our conscious mind is coming from our subconscious. I think we should put in the show notes a link to Janie Marvin's material.
Okay.
She has a lot of stuff online if anybody on the podcast wants to tap into it, because she just taught me this, that everything.
I'll talk to the producer,
and maybe I can have her out. You can interview her.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Anyway, everything that's coming to our mind is coming from the subconscious. We think it's coming from our environment. It's not. It's coming from our subconscious. So, but however, we can program our subconscious consciously. This conscious mind can always override the subconscious. We see this in near-death experiences. We see this where people have to make a decision to live, and they do superhuman things. That's because their conscious mind steps in and says, no, damn it. This isn't going to go down that way. We're going to change it, and we're going to change it right now. And there's this emotion, this chemical, this stuff that's released into the brain because the conscious mind said, move out of my way. And that's what we have to do to change those thoughts, to change, to stay into a happy or a positive thought, something that has healthy consequences as opposed to negative thought, is just become conscious more. We have to become more aware of our conscious mind and what's actually going on, and not just be so programmed to do what we've always done because that's the way we grew up, and because that's what our parents did, and that's what our grandparents did, and our great-grandparents. Janie can explain this stuff with more detail and in a lot of, in a lot clearer ways, but.
Well, it's mindfulness. It's actively taking a look at the way that your brain operates and the way that thought works, and then kind of taking control of it, as opposed to just letting it spin, as opposed to just letting the chaos ensue that is always there. Actively kind of taking control of it and working with it, as opposed to just being a spectator. Do you know what I mean? You're going to get in the game of your thoughts, of your mind, and the way that your brain processes information and experience, as well as emotion. Because so much of it, we've had really good conversations in the past and things like that. But for me, it's energy and emotion, and the way that emotion works and vibrates in that frequency. That's, for me, the way energy works. And so you really initially have to kind of take control of the brain, because that works your physical body, right? That kind of is what we function on. Obviously, if we don't have a brain, we're screwed. So you have to learn how to take control of that and start working with it, and then expand outwards from there to where you can start taking control of your emotions. And when I say take control of it, it's not like it's really not taking control of it. It's really letting go. But in the process of doing so, being aware and connecting with it and allowing all of these feelings to go up. So your path down addiction and the way that it started and everything like that obviously stems from all sorts of different things throughout your life and experiences. And like you said, it was a Band-Aid fix initially to where I have all these emotions that I can't feel and can't cope and can't manage. And they're connected with thoughts, and it's all that interconnectedness, and I can't deal with it. So I'm going to numb it. I'm going to disconnect from it. I'm going to stick a Band-Aid on it in hopes of it will go away. They don't go away. The fact is, even now today, I mean, you've been clean for how long?
I don't know. I'm not one of these.
You don't count it by the day?
Enough. I don't know, 7-8 years.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that I'll always be an addict.
You don't have that mindset.
I know there's a lot of people in the 12-step community right now that are probably falling off their chairs, but I don't believe that. I believe I am right now.
Yeah.
But I don't believe I always will be. It's been probably 8 or 9 years. I do, however, think that I could always, I'm only a few months away from falling back into that.
Yeah.
If I allowed myself to. If I didn't get enough sleep. If I didn't eat the things that I think my brain needs to be able to make the right choices and decisions. And so, yeah, I think it's been about 8 or 9 years.
I agree with you. I think it's silly to have that. When I say silly, I'm not judging anybody in any way, shape, or form, but to have that mindset that I'm always going to be an addict. I think I understand why they, like in the 12-step program, why that's kind of the common theme, because they want you, and when I say they, whoever, came up with, the idea is you have to keep that always kind of percolating in your mind.
You have to. It's a reminder.
It is a
to
reminder.
Be humble.
So then you're always in the practice of not just the 12-step program, but that mindfulness and awareness of your emotions and your feelings and reason. The reason why you want to stay clean. And so it's just that constant reminder. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, because I think about, like with me, we'll just use me with smoking. There's been times in my life where I've gone years without smoking, and then sure shit, I pick it back up again. And so I look at myself now, and do I think I'm going to quit at some point? Yeah, I do. I think I'll stop smoking again. But then, who's to say 10 years down the road, I might start again? I don't know. For me, I try not to judge myself too harshly for it. All of that kind of stuff. And I think that's important. I think we have to go much easier on ourselves, because we're way easier on everybody else that we come into contact with. You just have to allow yourself more space. And it's not to make mistakes. I don't think we really make mistakes. I think it's just allow yourself more space to practice the art of living.
Right.
Right. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of practical. I mean, we could sit here for a long time and talk about what's going on and what the issues are.
Uh-huh.
But there's also a whole nother part of that, which is what can we do right now in the present, and what can we do in the future and prepare for? And I've just found for myself, like when it comes to making those changes, when it comes to overcoming addiction, when it comes to giving my body and my brain the best opportunity it has to function the way it was designed to, it comes back to the basics, like sleep.
Yeah. Like
sleeping at the right times.
Mm-hmm. Having a healthy sleep cycle.
Yeah, there's a podcast out there that his name's Sean Stevenson, the Model Health Show, and he just wrote a book called Sleep Better, and hundreds of studies, and he puts it together about how sleep is so important for everything. And when I started to do that, like I used to stay up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning and sleep till 7 or noon, whatever. Well, now it's 9:30, 10:30. I go to bed, and sometimes I'm up 6 or 7, and then it's getting in the nutrients into my body so that my brain can build the cells it needs, so that my blood can work the way it should, so that things can actually function the way they're supposed to. So I have less cravings, so I'm less vulnerable, I'm less moody. And I think that those things all build on each other. So when it's, for me, in the future, when I figure out exactly how I'm going to structure Serbi, which is Serbi Addiction Services, which is the company I'm currently starting to build. It's going to be a well overall wide approach, from health and nutrition to fitness to the stuff Janie and Linda taught me as far as subconscious programming and mindfulness, to spirituality, to, it's not going to just focus on sitting around in a circle repeating that I'm an addict, this is my story. So I don't know, I just found for myself that the first thing that people have to do, and the first thing that I struggled with, and I've seen this in rehab, when I was in rehab, and then when I go into rehabs, and now and speak and stuff, is that, man, most of them in there, they don't believe that they can do it.
Yeah.
They just don't believe it. So how are we going to get them to believe it? Because those thoughts are ingrained for a long time.
It goes way back. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? The mindset and the belief, because it's a deep, deep, deep topic and conversation, and we're barely brushing and skimming the surface of it. Because the reality is there's that thing where it's like, you can't force an addict to get clean. You can't force somebody to do this. You can, you might be able to force them into a rehab facility or some sort of, whether it's going to jail or it doesn't matter, they may be forced, but in the end, it boils down to them really having that thought, like you described, having that light that suddenly clicks on, even if it's really dim, and then them taking a hold of that. You can try to plant all the seeds that you want. You can water all of those seeds. You can dump copious amounts of time and energy into trying to help somebody. But until they grab a hold of whether it's a seed that you planted or one that, divinely they were guided to in some way, shape, or form, but they're the ones that have to grab it, and they're the ones that have to kind of nurture it and water it and do all of the things that they need to do. Because you can't change anybody. And right. I think change is, I don't like the word change. People are hesitant to change, and we think change is bad and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's an evolution outside of where they are kind of stuck and stagnant.
I agree with you. I think we can change somebody. We can change ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think the 12-step program has done a great job over the years. AA and the 12-step that's why they get into the concept of your higher power.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, that's what they need to transform, to at least trigger that thought that says, maybe I can do it. Not because of me, but because of something greater than me. And I think that's great. I think that they've done a great job of doing that. But Craig, what determines, let's get into this. What is the light?
What is that light that clicks on inside
somebody? I know it's a thought, but why is one of my best friends that we basically went through some of the exact same patterns, why is he living on State Street right now with a needle in his arm?
Yeah.
Because he's had the same thoughts I have at times. So
he's had the same light that's clicked on. He just didn't hold on to it.
Well, what was it? Was it internal or external? Where's the light coming from, and who determines who gets it and how long it stays?
Well, I'll tell you what my belief is. I think that all thought that we have, I think all ideas that we have, I think everything that kind of flows through our brain, and this is just one of the things that actually recently has kind of been in my thought process and my belief, and I like to play around with it and think about it and analyze it and things like that. But I think all thought, because suddenly you'll just have an idea and it just pops into your mind. It just appears out of nowhere, sometimes seemingly, where you just suddenly have an idea to do something. I think all of those are divinely planted, for lack of a better term. Now, I don't think that means that whether you want to call it God or the universe is up there sending down all of these different thoughts. I think we are always connected to that source of energy. We are always connected to the universe, even when we lose sight of it, even when we're, even when we personally feel like we may be disconnected. I think we're still very, very, very connected. And I think that the universe is always going to do what is for the highest and greatest good of us. That's why it's energy is love. That big ball of love up in the air is always going to want to direct us and guide us and point us in the direction of where we need to be. And so that's why when I say that those thoughts are, planted or something like that, like I said, it's not God sending down an idea to you. It's that connection that you're always in, and suddenly you have an idea, and it's simply the universe, and you're spinning in conjunction with it, and you hit upon an idea, which, I mean, you could think of it literally like suddenly it's sent down in a stream of light. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But you get that idea and you get that thought because that's what you need in that exact moment. That's what you need to be thinking about in that exact moment. That's the direction that you need to be going. Now you say, well, that's great when it comes to positive thought, right? Because if you have an idea and it seems like a good idea, and then you act upon that idea and it leads to more ideas and more thoughts and more experiences, and you spin in a positive vibration, well, that's a great theory. But why the hell is the universe sending me negative thoughts? Why am I thinking negatively? Or do you know what I mean? Like, us as individuals really only know our deepest, darkest thoughts, the things that suddenly pop into our heads and pop into our minds, the really dark stuff that we would never really talk about verbally with anybody, the stuff that we kind of run from in our own brains even. I think everybody has that, because sometimes you'll think some hellacious things, and it's not like, I mean, it's just really interesting, the thoughts that you get. And I think it's all interconnected. So I don't have that belief that there's good or bad. So you're not going to have a positive or a negative thought. You're just going to have energy. And so for whatever reason in that moment, you need that, what we would label a negative thought or a negative experience, because it is just energy that is perpetually moving you forward in the space of evolution.
Okay.
Take a big deep breath. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I can.
So the person, like your friend that, has had those similar thoughts of, I could change, or I could do more, or I could do this, but yet he hasn't yet. For some reason, it didn't stick, or it didn't. If we step outside of labeling things good or bad, or positive or negative, and simply look at it as it's just energy. And your friend is on his path and on his journey, and he is always connected to God. He is always connected to the universe, and everywhere he goes is exactly where he needs to be. So we're no longer looking at it as he's in a negative space because he's homeless and living on the streets and he's still an addict. It's simply energy, and that's the space that he needs to be in at this current time. And then you expand outwards to think about how we're all interconnected, and maybe he's living that experience now because he's benefiting some other aspect of humanity somewhere else, or maybe it could be even closer. Maybe it's inspiration for a friend of his or a family member of his to see him in the situation that he's in, and they choose something different.
Yeah, I can see the light in that. I mean, I would definitely agree with you that in a lot of ways I have felt like addiction is a gift because of the things that it teaches us. I mean, if you look at it, in no area of the medical field or in any other area of life have they ever studied the thought process, the decision-making process, the frontal cortex, and the part of your midbrain, which is their survival instincts and how they communicate.
Uh-huh.
And because of addiction, they're digging into that, and they're realizing, okay, how does this work with this pleasure senses and dopamine? And at what point do the chemicals numb your frontal cortex, which is your rational thought, your ability to make clear decisions, and your midbrain takes over, which is, say, survive. And addiction has taught us that. It also, the families, the people that surround an addict, they have a lot to learn. And that's probably one of the things that addiction will teach them if they allow it to. You don't have to look far oftentimes from an addict to find a family that needs to come together, that needs to have some healing as a whole.
Even on an individual basis,
Mm-hmm.
Within that family.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure that your family went through its own kind of process of everything during your experience,
Mm-hmm.
and then your individual siblings and your mother and father as well, kind of questioning, because I'm sure, undoubtedly your parents are going to wonder, why the hell, what did we do wrong? Why did Randy do this and his brother and sister didn't, or whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, there's just so much that can be gained from that experience, especially if we step outside of labeling it either positive or negative or good or bad.
Right. I would totally agree with that. Because some choices serve us and some don't. So there's another practical thing we can do moving forward
Mm-hmm.
in life in general, but especially with addiction, communicating. Because how, when something happens, that's a lot of times it's too late at that point to build those connections. But if those connections are already built and then something happens, that's a way different conversation. When you approach a child or a family member, somebody who you've spoke to, maybe you call them every Sunday afternoon for the last 5 years and just say, how are you? And actually listen. And then they're going through something and you call them on a Sunday and say, what's up? That's a way different conversation than somebody you haven't spoke to in 5 years.
Yeah.
When you just found out they got out of jail or prison and you say, what's up? It's almost like, I just think there's practical things that we can do that you don't need to pay a therapist or somebody $100 or a coach or a mentor.
Yeah.
You can just start doing it. Something that I've started doing recently is on Sunday afternoons, I'll think and I'll just kind of let some thoughts come to me, and I'll go downstairs on my computer and I'll pick somebody in my family and I'll write them an email. And I'll just say, hey, this is how things are going. My kids did this. This is what I'm doing with work. I was thinking about you the other day and when we were younger, and I remember, when you punched me in the arm or when we caught that lizard, or I remember when this happened. I just wanted you to know that even though I'm not there, that I think about you and your kids, and that I love you, and that I'm here for you, and that somehow we're going to make it through this crazy life.
Yeah.
Send.
It's a beautiful thing.
And it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take that much time. But I'm just starting to look at it like, I just feel like we need to. Too many times we have conversations about what the problems are with never getting to the practical solutions. Because earlier you talked about a thought that comes into our brain. Have you ever heard of the morphogenetic field?
No.
This concept that all energy that we feel here, any thought we have, travels through and affects China within 24 hours. Like, it's all circulating, all this energy.
Yeah.
It's called the morphogenetic field. And I know whether it's that or not, or how, I can't explain exactly how it works, but I know for a fact that there's something there. Because how many times you're driving down the street and you think about calling somebody, you don't call them, your phone rings, it's them. Like, there has to be a connection between us somewhere for them to pick up on that. And this concept of these thoughts that come into your brain, and when we talk about the light, and you have a seed that's planted, we're physical creatures. We have to act. So I agree there isn't necessarily bad and good as far as in the judging standpoint, but there are good choices and poor choices. There's choices that bring you joy and confidence, and choices that bring you pain and more insecurities and more doubt. So what's the steps we take? How do we help people determine once they have a conscious thought, which, by the way, most of the time is coming from your subconscious. It may not be coming from the universe or from God. It might be coming from an experience you had when you were 4 years old that you don't even remember. It's been in your subconscious the entire time, and it just came to conscience.
What if it's coming from somebody else? Because you talk about that morphogenetic field. What if it's coming from somebody else? So suddenly you have that thought of, I can do more, I can be more, I can make this change. And what if that is your mom sitting at home thinking about you and thinking,
sure,
I
believe
know
it
that
could.
Randy has this ability.
What
I
if
know he's got it. Do you know what I mean?
What if it is? What if it's coming from my mom's subconscious?
Yeah.
And not even her conscious mind.
Yeah, and maybe there isn't the big ball of light and love and God and the universe up in the sky. It's just all us and our energy here on this planet, and we're all interconnected in that field and all these spider webs and connections. And so these thoughts that are suddenly appear out of nowhere may have just been a thought of somebody else. And then you think, well, where did that thought come from? And it's just that big cycle, the circle of life, blah, blah, blah. But that's an interesting thought. It's an interesting way to look at it. Somebody just sent that to me from China telepathically.
Right. Well, and I also believe, that, so what happens, a thought leads to an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions lead to actions. Actions lead to consequences, right? So good and bad, like there's consequences. Everything you do affects other things in other ways. So this concept of having a thought, recognizing that thought. First of all, like, okay, I have a thought. It's 2:00 on Friday afternoon. I'm sitting in my car, like I'm consciously aware of what's going on. I've got my phone turned off or it's sitting down, and now I have a choice to make. I have a decision. Especially if we're trying to make a change. Like when it comes to staying clean, I've had to do that a lot. I mean, this is why I say I don't believe I'll always be an addict, but I believe I am today. As far as I don't label myself as that. I'm a lot of things. I'm a son of God. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a transformer. I'm a creator. Like I'm here to shake things up, make some changes. I'm way more than an addict.
Yeah.
Right. But 2 weeks ago, I played basketball a lot and my foot was killing me. So I had to go down. I had to travel from where we live, which is Bowbells, and head down to Bismarck to do some paperwork. And on my way down there, I think, man, there's a lot of clinics down here. I should get my foot looked at, a lot cheaper than where I live. So I have about 10 miles from where I have this thought until when I get to town. By the time I get to town, I've convinced myself that if my foot really hurts, I should be able to get a Baldol Lortab. And if I can pick the right doctor, should be no problem. If I get a hotel room there, I don't have to work for 4 days. I could take some tonight. I'd have 4 or 5 days off before I could ever go back to work. I wouldn't jeopardize the health of my family or the safety of my family or their security, because I wouldn't fail drug tests if something accidentally happened. And my brain, those old programs, those old thoughts, has it all planned out. Right? So what happens? At some point, I think, you know what? This foot, it might be something that needs an x-ray, but it's probably not. I should probably massage it, keep eating healthy, give it some time, and see if it will work itself out, because that's what my body's designed to do. On the contrary, I'm going to have to pay money if I go into the doctor, which I believe is a bloated system that I have no interest in taking part in unless I absolutely have to. Keep me out of there, keep me out of the paperwork. I don't want anything to do with your charts and your white gowns. Thank you. I'll take my green smoothie. You know what I mean? So I think I'm not negative towards doctors anymore. I used to be, because that's where I got all my prescriptions, but I was the one that instigated all that. I was taking part in a system that, that I was the one doing it. But Craig, even after 8 or 10 years or whatever, I still, just 2 weeks ago, had to make a conscious decision. And I was just driving down the road and I was on my way to a clinic. At that point, not sure, like I wasn't gonna, you never know if you would actually get a prescription or not.
Yeah.
But I just said, you know what? No, not today. I'm just gonna turn left. I'm gonna drive home to my kids. And I turned left and I drove home to my kids. And I hadn't thought about it since. So what would have happened had I gone to the doctor, got a prescription, stayed at the hotel? Probably nothing. Maybe not. But what would have been the point? What would I have been running from? The pressure of being a dad, I guess, at this point. Because I do feel you feel a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You've been through that phase.
Being a parent, I'm still in that phase. I don't think that ever ends.
I got 3
when you
kids,
have kids, it's
under
hard.
5.
Yeah.
And so now I've got my wife, and we're probably going to have another child. And it's like, I look in the mirror like, really? Like, you mean I got to feed all these people?
Yeah.
And I got to like be gentle with all of them and like loving, persuasive, and like help them learn instead of just fire out, demands and then clean up the pieces later. And like, okay, I'll just go like get through this week, next week, whatever. So, what can we do to help people as a whole become consciously aware enough to make a decision that's going to serve them in the future? At least give them the confidence to say, you know what, I turned left and I drove home to my kids, because I still could have got killed on my way home. Anything could have happened. But at what point do we use the energy and the knowledge that we have, who, we may have addictions, but not to the degree of we're not putting ourselves at as much risk as somebody who's using a needle that they found in the gutter, that that light, for whatever reason, it's so dim. That's my thing, Craig, because that's what I feel like my mission is.
I think it's a noble mission. I think you're very well suited for it. I think you're very capable, and I'm excited to see what the hell you do with it.
Well, there's a better way. I know that. I mean, I'm not saying that there's some app you're going to download and we're going to fix it. But what I'm saying is, I've been into a lot of facilities in the last couple of years, and I've been speaking, and I don't think there's enough energy in some of these places. I think they're doing great. Some of it's state funded. People working there just got a job, doing the best they can to love people. But at some point, you get desensitized to the continual bad choices or poor choices that don't serve them over time. And
yeah, I think there definitely has to be a different approach. I think the program that's in place now, the system that we've been using and trying to make work, I don't think it's working. And
you mean the prison system?
Prison system's a huge one. But even when it comes to, addiction or mental health treatment or anything like that, because when I say they're all interconnected and related, I mean, there's aspects of them that are very common, and it just doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? There has to be a different way to do things. And I think they're coming up with different ideas and different ways and different thought processes and stuff like that. But I mean, as far as like what you and I can do and what the listener can do, what can people do on an individual basis? I think it's important to communicate. I think it
comes back to our families, individual relationships,
mm-hmm.
and individual choices, and putting that energy. Yeah, I don't know, Craig. I just think that, if there is this energy, that these thoughts, whether it comes from subconscious or from God or from the universe, the conscious mind, these thoughts we have, I think families have a lot more power than they realize to affect their loved one that's struggling with an addiction. But first, they have to realize they have a lot more power than they realize to affect themselves.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference between coming in front of an addict and saying, "Let me show you, follow me. Just follow me a little bit. Even if just for a couple hours, let's go to lunch. Let me explain to you how I've changed." And maybe you'll be able to see it, maybe you won't. That's a way different conversation than picking them up and say, "Why haven't you changed?"
Yeah.
Why
you need to fix this and change this.
And then in the very conversation, there'll be, a lot of times there'll be negativity about other members of the family.
Mm-hmm.
In the same conversation, it's like, listen, that's not what they need. Anyway, I agree with you. What we can do, the healing, a lot of that stuff has to come back to the individuals and the families. There's not enough doctors. There's not enough beds in rehabs. There's not enough wilderness survival programs to handle everybody
that needs help.
Yeah. And now the law, they're getting more and more lenient because of overcrowding and treatment options, which it's one of the things that I liked about Obamacare is there's options for treatment. And I think that people should have that choice. I think that's what they should do. But now there's parents that are hoping so badly every day that their kids would just go to prison. Please take them to prison.
Yeah.
Now they're shaking their heads saying they're letting them go. Why? Well, because for 10 years everybody was crying because we were keeping them. Like, it's just, there's just so much that can be done.
Well, we can make the change.
Yeah.
You gotta go get your float on now.
Yeah.
But thank you very, very, very much, Randy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was a damn good episode. You did a good job.
Well, I'll be back, and next time I come back, I'm going to have some more things set in place so that we can.
You're always welcome back on the show. I love it. It's awesome.
Tomorrow morning.
Thank you, everybody out there in the universe and the world, the planet, all that kind of crap. Maybe this podcast happened because one of our listeners in Australia thought a thought, and then we were both implanted with that thought. You never know, but thank you.
We'll think about it. How's that?
There you go. We'll send it back to them. But everybody go out and have a wonderful day.
Love you. I want to plant some seeds. There's this clarity and there's these thoughts that sink into your mind and in your heart and that say, you could still accomplish your goals. A little tiny light came on in my brain. Do what it is you wanted to do when you were younger, when you had dreams.